Fear is the thing that gets in the way of everything. And the difficult thing about fear is it can disguise itself as being rational, being sensible, being even-minded. It can disguise itself so cleverly.
But there's failure in there somewhere. What makes you comfortable failing?
I don't see it as failure. It's an old cliche. I just think it's a learning curve. There's no failure. Failure is stopping.
Hi, and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I'm an independent financial advisor and wealth coach. I'm the director of Evolution Financial Planning, who is also our sponsor for today's show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share and review this episode. With your help, we'll reach more people who can benefit from the show. Did you know I wrote a book? It's called Accelerating Your Wealth. Funny enough, the same as the show, Accelerating Your Wealth podcast show. But this is 10 ways to accelerate your wealth. It was designed to really help people with their finances in a simple way. So we focus on some key sections around your money mindset, some practical things that can be done with your finances and allowing you to maximize your money and your future. So if you're thinking, hey, this stuff is interesting, then the best next step for you is to check out the book. It's an Amazon 5-star bestseller. Yeah, I know, it's great, right? Go and check it out. You can buy it on Amazon and have it with you tomorrow for a nice cup of tea. Hello and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth. I'm your host, Rebecca Robertson, and welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking about leadership for women, and who joins me is Alexandra Watson, who is the founder of Leadership School for Women, and she has spent 30 years. Yes, I think we're going to be digging some deep here, ladies and gents. Digging deep into the last 30 years of coaching women at the highest level of business, Olympic athletes to board directors, and is recognised as a leading voice on female leadership performance in the UK. Hello.
Hello.
So, where do we even start with all of that?
Gosh, we can go all the way back to 1990-something when I started doing this, or we can start what I did before I arrived here at the studio. But I was sort of thinking that my whole career has been such a wiggle from a zig over here and a zag over there. And I just think that's normal these days, isn't it? For you never have a straight line with your career. But it's been amazing. I've been very, very fortunate to coach and train some of the most incredible women from all walks of life and from all different countries, all four corners of the globe, as they say.
Amazing. And what would you say is your biggest high in your career?
Nothing to do with what I'm doing now. And I'm going to be totally honest with you, it was actually working for Prince. Before I became the legend that is the purple one. Yes. Right. So that was actually when I was very, very young, but still remains one of the highlights, as you can imagine. Working with him was extraordinary. Talk about learning about performance, because he was still is one of the best performers on stage. And what I learned from him in terms of how to command an audience, how to be a leader of a band, how to lead an audience from the slowest ballad to the raunchiest, jumpy, funky number, was just watching mastery in action, and how his work ethic as well was incredible. So I learnt an incredible amount from that man, and then took it and put it into my work. He is still to this day one of my best mentors.
Amazing. And what would be your lowest low?
Professionally or personally? Professionally,
well, whichever takes your fancy.
I don't have a massive low. I think what's happened is, because I'm sort of quite scrappy, I've never allowed it to get low. I've always been creative and tried to think of something else. If I felt like something was actually not working, I'd go, right, okay, pivot. What can I do next? I think COVID was a great example, because a lot of the stuff that I was doing was in person. And doing workshops, had all those booked in, training and all that. And it was the pivot to doing it online, which was a scramble. But I think we were all doing the same thing, weren't we?
Yeah, sure. What makes you so scrappy? Where does that scrappiness come from?
That's a really good question. I think I'm just so ambitious that if I can see an obstacle coming, if I can preempt one, great. If I can see one coming, I will do all I can to, move around it. And if I suddenly hit in the face by one, it's okay, let's jump over it. So I'm very much driven I've always been highly motivated as a person, not always in the right direction and not always knowing exactly what I was doing, but always driven. And I don't even know what that was, or where that came from, that drive. Nothing really in my family life, in my parenting or anything like that from, my parents or family that was like that. It's just one of those things that I had and didn't know what to do with it at first. So went into, after working with Prince, the obvious jump then was to work in marketing and PR, which I did. And then threw everything at that with full-on enthusiasm and gusto and get out of my way, here I am, aren't you all lucky, hurrah. And then realized that wasn't the career for me either, although I gave it a good old run. I felt there was something missing. And I didn't know what it was. All I could say, I was bored in the boardroom. And I thought, is this all there is? I've worked really, really hard to get here. And is this it? Was basically what I was thinking to myself. And I realized, kind of put my ladder up against the wrong wall. And I needed to make a shift. But I didn't know what that was. And then as things happen, somebody said to me one time, I was running a business club. And somebody said to me, have you heard of Tony Robbins? And I went, oh, that American guy. And they said, oh, yeah, you should listen to him. I think that might help. And I did. There were cassette tapes then, talking 90s, like I say, and listened to all his cassette tapes. And it struck me, there was one thing he said that made me sort of stop, rewind the cassette tape over and over again to just really hear it, because it gave me goosebumps. And I think we all have that moment, don't we, in our lives somewhere, that it's something that just absolutely changes the story. And he said, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And I just went, oh my God, not this, not what I'm doing now. And I thought, well, what does he do? I like what he does. He's very inspiring. He's very interesting. And of course, we figured out it was life coaching. And back in those days,
there was no such
nobody
name for
knew what it was. I mean, if I said I'm a life coach, people said, oh, which swimming pool do you work at? I was like, no, not a lifeguard. So it took a while. And when I started out life coaching, I had all my marketing clients and I turned them all into coaching clients. And they were very nice about it, letting me experiment with them. But it worked out that way. So I sort of kicked off with a full sort of office full of clients, which was great. And off I went, and I have not looked back since.
Wow, what a change! Like even just as you're talking, the determination and the gusto that you have in achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I know that when there was a period of time where I would probably say I was similar in that I was just so driven. And I did the book and I did the TEDx talk and I did the awards. But what I realised after a time as sort of a self-reflecting person, it's because of my upbringing and the fact I wasn't good at school and I wasn't deemed to be successful at school, that then when I was in my professional career, I was trying to prove to myself that I was worthy, if you like. So for me, that's where that sort of drive was coming from. But now when I look at it and I think, okay, what drives me now? If I compare, I don't like to compare myself to others because I don't think that's a healthy place to start in itself. But
depends on who you're comparing yourself to.
Yeah, right.
It could be very healthy.
Yeah, but I sometimes find some, the conversations, for example, on the school playground, like it feels quite mean, like it's just pointless, talking about the weather and you've walked the dog and like I feel that there's so much more to life than that, and there's so much more that ambition to achieve more and be more and have more if that's the right thing from a wealth perspective, but certainly being comfortable and having to be able to have the choices that I'm able to now make, I feel that gives you that security. I think that does drive me.
Did you feel worthy of all this?
Now I do, right. But if I'd have had it maybe 10 years ago, no.
That's the problem with a lot of women, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things I'm talking about most of the time. No matter who I'm coaching at what level, it's worthiness.
Yeah.
Is underneath it all.
Yeah. And so what I'm intrigued about you, though, is there doesn't sound like there was any doubts. Like it sounds
I
don't
know why.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'd been more reflective like you are.
Yeah.
One might have crept in. But no, I can't even tell you what it was. It still is. It's just a direct, even though my career's been, like I say, a zigzag, the focus has been firm and steady. I don't know. Maybe it's just a kind of testing things, throwing things at, throwing everything I've got at something, going with my gut feeling, if what would work and what doesn't work, what I'm really intrigued about, being okay with doing something extraordinary, not being fearful of standing out and saying, hi, this is who I am and this is what I think I can do.
But there's failure in there somewhere. What makes you comfortable failing?
I don't see it as failure. It's an old cliche. I just think it's a learning curve. There's no failure. Failure is stopping. Failure is giving up, if anything. If you've got the wherewithal to keep going, which I do, you kind of end up brushing off a lot of stuff. And you can detach yourself from... failing is... If you do see it that way, if you are worried about failing, 9 times out of 10, it's really what people will think of you. If you don't have an issue with that, which I don't, then you're more of a risk taker, I suppose.
Do you think that because when you're a coach yourself, you have to do a certain amount of personal development
if
on
you
yourself?
don't, you're not in integrity.
Yeah, because you need to be able to sort of talk from a place.
Don't get me started on that. I have seen so many coaches come and go in 30 years, you can imagine.
I can imagine. I've been 16 years, and on just the online space alone, the amount of people that have come and gone that were like money experts.
Yes.
And, financial gurus, and, then they're bankrupt and you don't see them anymore. And they were telling you to invest this way and that way. So I totally get where you're coming from a coaching perspective, even more so, I think. But I guess what I'm sort of leaning towards is you have to do a certain amount of personal development to be able to be. I think what you're describing is you're really authentic and firm in who you are and what you can achieve, and that allows you to be a very strong leader because it comes across authentically. It's not a fake it or to a make it kind of. Yeah. That's not the vibe that you give. So for a lot of women, I feel like we've got like these prerequisites, whether it's from our children or from when we were children, from our parents. It might be, I spoke to an interview a couple of weeks ago, which has just gone out. Her name's Rosie. She was at Oxford. She's a highly intelligent, lady. She's a coach, very lovely coach, and she had a realization at the kitchen table that like all these sort of money issues that she had that sort of unraveled because she had that self-reflection. She was able to sort of start to unravel it. So when you're speaking to women that do you get frustrated because you're sort of seeing the same kind of like, I imagine if like you're being so sort of authentic and strong and like you don't know where this drive comes from, do you find it frustrating when you start seeing the same things? Like why are women like not stepping up? Why are they keep doing? Do you get frustrated with that?
Well, yes and no, because and this is what I say to everybody I coach, and it's the honest truth. I see them on a pedestal as a glorious goddess, and my job as a coach is to get them to see themselves the same way. However we can do that, whatever it takes. So it's usually working with emotional intelligence. So the 3 ones that I focus on the most are self-awareness, self-esteem, obviously, and then self-management. If through that coaching process they elevate themselves in those 3 areas, then they begin to drop fear. Fear is the thing that gets in the way of everything. And the difficult thing about fear is it can disguise itself as being rational, being sensible, being even-minded. It can disguise itself so cleverly that a lot of the coaching process that I do is pointing out to them that you're just speaking to me through fear right now. So can we just drop that and speak through goddess mode? And then for them to get to know the difference between the 2 voices, if you will. And eventually through repeating processes and giving them methodology to do that, then they drop it. So I get frustrated only because fear is so clever And I'm never frustrated with them. I'm frustrated with fear. But I am their fear's nemesis. I can hear it, even when it tries its hardest to disguise itself or sound great. I'll go, no, that is still fear. And it has tell signs. So, it gives itself away. And when I teach those tell signs to the client, then they go, okay, I get it. And they start to see the wood for the trees and begin to elevate themselves. And then it becomes more rapid because they get to see what was standing in their way in the first place.
Amazing. And so let's talk about people pleaser for a second, because as women in leadership, I know that when I first started my business 16 years ago, I started with pleasing everybody else in the team. I was recruiting other advisors, and the whole model was based on them being happy, them having the right contract, them having the right commission split, that we were growing at the right rate that suited them, that I was doing all these things within the business that facilitated them. Literally, the whole model was based around other people rather than looking at, actually, well, why am I doing this? For me purposes, there is an element of wanting to support other people, but it shouldn't be the emphasis of everything. And when it sort of didn't quite work out and it was not quite going in the right direction, and my son's 9 now, and I was pregnant with him, I realised that I needed to make a change, and I really needed to start looking at how I was making these decisions and why I was looking at so much for other people to for them to say, oh, thank you, so giving me a pat on the back. And I started to look more inward. So I know people pleaser still has and still does to a degree, if I'm honest, in my approach. I think I'm quite an empathetic person. It makes me good at what I do. I understand people's perspective quite well. Yeah. But for when you're talking to, you're coaching women, I think fear and people pleaser are probably some of the sort of...
It's like me.
Yeah.
Me.
How can you start to, or how can women start to recognise that they're operating in that mode?
A lot of them will confess it straight away. I am a people pleaser. They will go, they know it already. The self-awareness is there. Like your good self. You just said, I'm total people, or I used to be, And so it's like a confessional at first. And then I say, well, tell me how that happens. In what kind of scenarios do you feel that is occurring the most? Once you sort of find that, then you can see the pattern of behavior. And it's just really looking at that pattern and what triggers that, response. And it is always down to self-esteem. And people pleasing is just one of the symptoms of the cause. So then we go back into looking at useful tools like catching yourself doing it in the moment, which is very, very key. So that's part of the self-awareness. Catching yourself doing it and then reframing what you're about to say or do in order it not to go down that pathway. And then again, it's repeat that. So again, it's creating a different habit. And knowing that actually being a people pleaser doesn't help anyone. And to become someone who does things that are more self-serving without being selfish, but more self-serving, then you really understand once you are empowered that way, then you can help more people. So it actually becomes a more powerful thing the less of a people pleaser you are, because then you become a better leader, literally by the fact that you have to make difficult decisions, you have to lead the way and inspire people, and not everyone's going to like that. That's something you have to get over very quickly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will hold you back. It's something that will and hold other people back. So it's almost like a duty to get rid of that.
Quick one before we get back to it. If these conversations are landing for you, we've made something to help you go deeper. It's a short quiz. You answer a few questions and it tells you where to focus, then builds you a playlist of every relevant episode so you're not hunting through the whole back catalogue. Investing, divorce, business, there are 9 areas to land in. The link's below. Got it. Okay. And so that all leads back to self-worth. And that, like, are you worth it kind of question.
And self-trust.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I one of the questions I was going to ask you when you was talking previously that came to mind is like, how do you trust? You seem to trust yourself so much. Like you seem to. There's no doubt in what you're.
I can overthink though, like the rest of us can, very much so, and that's one of the things I'm trying to get better at is not overthink it. But it is very much a gut feeling, is trust. It's the trouble with thinking things through. That's where fear lives in your brain. I get people to go to the gut a little bit, go with the gut feelings. They tend to lead you down the road better without fear all over you, like a monkey on your shoulders. So that's something that I have to remind myself of. And it's interesting because you can get very comfortable and very secure in a situation. And then as soon as you start to evolve or grow or have to go to the next level, then that fear and imposter syndrome and distrust of oneself can come flying back in the room, and you have to start the process all over again. And we call it in the trade, new level, new devil. So there's always an element. As long as you're growing, you're going to be tackling this.
Yeah.
It's when you stop growing and you get comfortable, then it fades away. But who wants to stagnate?
Yeah, exactly. So where does some of that unworthiness come from? Where does it start?
Well, it usually comes from, there's two things. There is that nature versus nurture discussion that we have. Is the person going to be who they are no matter what the parents are doing? And I think there is a strong case for that. Because I've seen great parents with, awkward children, let's put it that way, and then terrible parents with fantastic children. I've seen both. So I think it's a matter of, it can obviously be when we are the most influenced, which is when we're growing up, the formative years. How you are parented comes into it, but also how you are within yourself. So we all have our different levels of worthiness inbuilt, I think. And then it's a matter of how that is nurtured or improved as you get older, what challenges you face and how you approach them. So some of us are better at it than others is the answer to that. And there's no parenting really that can outdo somebody who's set on having a lot of issues in life because they feel so dreadful. That's when you need extra additional help, therapy, things like that, which I don't do. But it is really, I think, very, very interesting because I'm talking to a lot of parents of teenagers at the moment. How to parent as best you can, and the best way to parent is to be a solid human being yourself and not come from a fearful place. It's not trying to control children, and that's a whole thing in and of itself. But to understand your child in a way that is very loving, very compassionate, without, well, you have to keep your boundaries as well. So it's a fine balance. It's a massive discussion, and I'm not saying that I'm a genius at it. But it is something that I'm finding far more interesting now. I have my own teenager. So, yeah, these things hit you at different times in your life and become, more of a priority, which it has been. We're just doing A-levels right now. So that's been a really interesting journey for both of us, for him and for myself.
It's really interesting transition, isn't it? When after they've turned 16, you sort of feel like they're okay, it's all right. They're rounded individuals. Yep. We're good, and actually there's so much more work to be done. I found the transition from her turning 18 really strange. She asked for a dog for her birthday, and she'd wanted a dog for such a long time. But in my head, I had that pre-understanding from my own childhood that, yes, you can get a dog when you've got your own house. So when you've moved out and it's your home, you can get an animal and you can look after it. Because I was feeling that if she had it at our house, I'll end up having to look after it all the time.
Yes.
Which is not, not
Would
far.
Would she not settle for a guiney pig? Something a little easier?
No, my daughter doesn't settle for anything. She's only the best. And but there was this moment that I had that I thought, why? Where does this where is this sort of coming from, this programming coming from? What would it actually look like? Okay, she's going to go down the yard every day. She's going to walk it. So when she's down the yard, the dog will go with her. She will feed it. She will pay for his insurance. She will take it to the vets. What actually is my input here? And it's when she goes out, maybe 6-7 o'clock, so earlier in the evening before we go to bed, that I will need to look after this dog on occasions. And the emotional impact, the support that she felt and the love that she felt, not only from this dog but from us agreeing to get it for her, has been immense. Like the knock-on effect in comparison of me digging my heels compared to what she's got from this relationship. It was something she desperately wanted. And it's really interesting as a parent. You think, oh, they've turned a certain age and that's it, your job's done. But it's actually been really interesting. And that also that self-reflection of, oh, there's still some pre-programming going on in what I feel is right or wrong based on how I was brought up. So I think that when we then start to reflect on that is when it comes to our job and our career, what other prerequisites have we got? Like you say, there's another level. And the same applies with finances. When you're sort of looking at your finances with that lens, you get to a certain level, whether it's a certain level of income or a certain level of savings or a certain level of money invested. And I find it really fascinating how those shifts start to happen. So an example of that is someone that's just started their business. They spend sort of 3 or 4 years being skint, not having very much. And then all of a sudden they've hit a bit of a windfall. Things are going really well. And they've started to bring some money in. And it's interesting how their spending habits reflect their self-worth. And they will go and spend money on seriously mundane things. And the amount of handbags you'll see pictures of, you know, the entrepreneurs looking, so look at me, online space, you know, another private jet, or whatever extent you want to look at it to. But that's how that's my lens on it. It's not a judgment. It's like, okay, where are you? How are you showing up? What are you showing us of what you're doing? That's obviously important to you, that you give off that kind of vibe. That's what's important to you. That initial transition when they go into that earning money, you know, great, they've treated themselves to a special pair of shoes or a special handbag, and we deserve those odd treats. But then what continues to happen is that spending habit just increases and continues, and usually about a year or sometimes 2 years later, they then stop and go, I need to stop doing this. And so then they normally come and find me. They don't come to me when they haven't got as much money, although they should. They don't come to me when their spending habits are high. It's once they've sort of filled that self-worth, that gap that they felt for, whether it's their childhood, the lack of money when they first started their business, the, you know, wanting to make themselves feel good, that they're successful because they've got these certain things that they've done or bought. And then now they're in a position to go, actually, maybe I need to look at this slightly differently. What financial success, I need to view it differently.
Right.
So when you're speaking to your coaching clients, when it comes to leadership and the money lens, how do you see that sort of self-worth in the sort of more corporate environments or the employed environments reflecting?
It's really interesting because I've worked with business women, business owners, very different spenders and money mindset to executive women. So talking about the entrepreneurial women, they are more risk takers, willing to, you know, sometimes do something that's quite out there just to get the business going, or to do something, you know, whatever they think will help them. And I love that. I love that passion. I'm the same. I've always sort of, if I felt like, okay, this is going to get me further, I'm going to invest in it. So I've loved that mindset. It's really gung-ho. It's very passionate and, you know, often does the trick. When talking to executive women, you get two things. You get women at a certain level who expect the company to pay for coaching. And then you get the ones who really need it, perhaps further down the pipeline, who really need the visibility, really need the confidence, really need to get to grips with their leadership profile and brand. And they very, very nervous of spending any money on themselves, which, you know, you can't argue with it. But what I say to them, not that they have to spend it with me, but this is your career. This is a huge part of who you are. And make sure that you don't put yourself last on the list. And I think some women do tend to put themselves last on the list, and which is a shame. Like you say, we're nurturers, we're empaths, and we're usually parents in some form. So we are always looking out for other people. So to see a woman freely spend money to invest within herself is very rare in the corporate world. So I find that an interesting conversation. I haven't come across it a great deal personally, but I've heard a lot of people have. And that seems to be the block, the wall between them hiring their own personal coaches. They do have an expectation that coaches should come from the inside. And a lot of the times they do. But my argument to that would be that you need a coach that has no agenda within the business, that it's all about them, and a far more powerful approach to their career than just a linear, okay, how do we get you ready for this promotion? The irony is that the women who need it are the ones who don't have the budget for it in terms of set aside corporately for them. So I'm trying to change all that, obviously, because I see that as a massive gap and an issue. So I talk to a lot of companies about that. I also talk about it a great deal, write about it a great deal. And within the Leadership School for Women, we offer things that are more accessible that way, because I think we shouldn't be leaving women behind. Yes, there's some mindset things to overcome in terms of self-worth and investing in oneself. But also there is literally the practicality of having budgets available for women who can then go, okay, I'll take this to invest in myself and have a personal coach or a career coach, or do some form of career progression that is just all about me. Now, my approach is that, the best form of career progression is the personal development. Hand in hand with professional development, but the personal development has to come first. Because if you go, for example, if you go along to a day of leadership for women, in London, the summits, the conferences that happen, it's a lot of discussion. Maybe have a very inspiring speaker. And then they go home and do what? That's the problem. There's no internal shift. There's no emotional change. There needs to be more than that. A lot of companies have been sort of looking at different issues like menopause is coming up and things like that. And then we'll do a coffee morning on menopause and think, right, we've ticked that box. That's all done. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We actually need more now. We need a lot more practicalities, methodologies, support in those areas, because that's what women are facing. A lot of women are now retiring early. Senior women with all this fantastic knowledge and experience and expertise are leaving in droves more than ever, because they don't see a pathway ahead that doesn't include burnout.
I hear that when I'm talking to clients. Like, I cannot be doing this forever. They're in their 40s, some are 50s, and they're saying, when can I stop, Rebecca? Please tell me when this is over. Because I can't keep doing this.
No, exactly. So burnout's a massive issue, and the retention of women for corporates is a massive issue and a very expensive one. So they have to do things. There's also legislation coming in 2027 about equality in different areas, of course, but basically it's looking after the female leaders much better than they are doing at the moment. They have to do things that are measurable and can be seen.
What would that look like then? That
well,
move?
I've interpreted it a certain way. Obviously, I've hearkened it back to, women who actually need the development happens much further down the pipeline than they're actually putting money towards. So it really is leadership development that sort of the strategies I talk about are good for anybody at any level. And that's the whole point. Even 14-year-old girls can take what I teach and learn a great deal from it to become a good leader coming forward into the sixth form or college or wherever she's going. So it's an easy sort of setup, if you will. It's not a big drama. But what a lot of HR departments or DEI departments or leadership and development things tend to overcomplicate it and actually make it too generic. So when you teach someone these strategies that I talk about, then you can actually learn in your own way, and you can develop and measure your own progress yourself. So it's really interesting that this sort of legislation is coming in, because it's forcing the hand. It's forcing the HR to relook at their development for women and to do something about it, which I'm delighted about, obviously.
So where's that come about, that legislation? Why has it happened?
It's happened. Equal pay, obviously, is still an absolute nightmare. And also harassment at work is still a big issue. And there are certain other little things. There's 4 main things within that that's brought it all forward, which basically means you need more personal development for your female leaders. In order for them to understand boundaries, have their own boundaries, to be more visible, to put themselves forward more, not to want to leave because of burnout, how to avoid burnout, all the internal cultural things as well as their internal workings as well. So menopause is another big one that's in the legislation. Okay. There's quite a few things up there that is going to help bring forward, I think, a better version of leadership development for women.
So why is it important for corporates to want to have women, better women leaders and staying in the business?
Because there's been a lot of research in what happens to a business when females are further up the ladder, and the overriding massive sort of obvious answer is companies do so much better when women are at the top. And there's a firm pipeline behind them. That is a business argument you cannot ignore. But what they tend to fail at is giving leadership development that's adequate for women. Because women are different to men. We think differently and approach things differently. And so you need to be taught differently. You need to have things that are, like we say, you don't get a lot of male people pleasers, do you? No. We don't have. I mean, there's one thing. This is such a classic story. I was talking to a wonderful lady who runs a recruitment agency, and we were talking about the difference between men and women. And she said, I've got a story that tells you exactly the difference between men and women. I said, let's hear it. So she said, I had this perfect role for 2 people on my books. One of them was a man, one of them was a woman. I phoned up the man first. I had a 20-minute conversation. Within the hour, he had his updated CV on my desk. Then I spoke to the woman, who I thought would equally be good. It took me an hour and a half to persuade her that she was good enough for this role, and then 2 weeks to get her CV back because it had done the rounds.
Yeah.
That's it. That's, if you want an absolute, in a nutshell, the difference between men and women at work, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why leadership development needs to be the same, different for men than it is for women.
Love that. We're going to take a break. And so if you want to hear the rest of this conversation, then listen in on Monday. Do subscribe, and then you'll be notified when the next session drops. And that'll be on Monday morning. Thank you for joining us today at Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do subscribe and let us know in the comments any of your thoughts.